Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jordan here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I'm going to be playing the Empire, and I'm going to be facing off against Bretonnia, so definitely a fun and relatively uncommon matchup from my experience, but hopefully you guys will enjoy this one. So as far as my front line goes, I have a front line of swordsmen. I feel like they're pretty good fodder infantry against Bretonnia. They're shielded, which means they hold up relatively well against peasant bowmen, and they do have some armor. It's not a lot, but hey, anything helps against the peasant bowmen, that's for sure. And as far as combat stats goes, it's pretty decent. Their melee attack isn't bad. Their melee defense is, it's okay. So at the end of the day, they can hold up pretty well against men-at-arms at polearms, as well as the Bretonnian spearmen. So definitely not a bad choice in my opinion. I have two groups of crossbowmen, and again, you do need some missile troops to, deal with flying harass and as well as the enemy missile units as well. So hopefully they'll do well for me. In the wings, again, Bretonnia will often bring Knights of the Realm, Grail Knights, those type of things. So I do like to have some halberdiers, which I keep in the wings, and they're pretty helpful. They do have an anti-large and an armor-piercing bonus, and though Bretonnia doesn't have a lot of armor, even on their cav units, it's still helpful. I know the Pegasus Knights, if we take a quick look, guys, they have 80 armor, and he actually didn't bring King Loon, but he did bring a Paladin as well as a Lord, who have 80 and 100 armor, I believe, respectively. So it's definitely helpful to have at least a group or two of halberdiers. So I also decided to bring the Tattersouls, who are pretty fun. They are unbreakable and have pretty high combat stats with 43 melee attack, actually. So I feel like these guys, if you can, get them past the peasant bowmen, can really tear through Bretonnian infantry. And they are unbreakable, so hey, even if they do take a beating, at least they'll keep fighting. And over here, I forgot to mention, I do have the Sons of Sigmar. Very, very cool unit, and pretty high combat stats as well, with 43 melee attack and 43 melee defense. So these guys can really, actually punch through low-tier Bretonnian infantry. And then I have a General of the Empire. I have a Empire Captain, a Bright Wizard for the Flaming Sword of Ruin and Cascading Fire Cloak, which are just such good synergy with the Knights of the Blazing Sun. And you guys have seen there's kind of been a trend in my videos lately. I've been kind of experimenting with the Knights of the Blazing Sun in a multitude of matchups, and they're just so powerful with the Flaming Sword of Ruin and then the Kindle Flame that gives them that additional combat advantage. It's very hard, and honestly, I haven't really encountered, many situations in which they just get shut down. So although maybe these Pegasus Knights will be up to the task. So he has a back line of peasant bowmen, a front line of men-at-arms with polearms. Pretty good choice. Armor piercing, just, and their leadership is much better than the traditional spearmen, though you're not going to get as many, raw density of troops here with this type of build. He also has a group of field trebuchets. I think it's just one, actually. He has a damsel who has I believe harmonic convergence and then the debuff, as well as a cone attack, and then several groups of Pegasus Knights, a Lord, and a Paladin. So without further ado, guys, sorry for the long-winded introduction. Just kind of wanted to explain to you guys this kind of janky composition I have here, and hopefully it'll be entertaining for you. I do have a Warrior Priest as well, who's pretty good. That 22 damage resistance buff isn't bad, and even the bombardment isn't bad against, because Bretonnia usually has a ton of like low-tier cheap infantry, so those bombardment spells, though they don't do a ton of damage, are usually pretty decent. So as it stands, my opponent is just posturing up here. He kind of has, all the advantages in regards to initial positioning. I have to advance on him. I didn't bring any, siege units or anything like that, and I typically don't like to against Bretonnia because for this reason. He could simply dive in, dive bomb it, shut them down, and then usually get out pretty unscathed. So I don't like to invest in that. And, again, I'm just going to have a slow, solid advancement here. But something that's a little risky, guys, is I am very cluttered here because I was trying to turn the corner as tightly as I could simply to get there as quickly as possible. But you guys will see here in a moment that was a huge mistake. Because, honestly, when I play against the Lord of the Heavens or Damsels for that matter, I usually never see this cone ability that she's about to use. So I was not expecting it at all. And you guys can see here, it's just going to do some brutal damage. So here it comes. Here comes the pain, and it is just going to tear through these troops. So you literally see my entire front line just get absolutely decimated. You see the Sons of Sigmar go flying, and that was not a fun situation. So I honestly think I was just paying attention back here and trying to see what he was doing, and I did not expect that ability. So very, very well played on my opponent's part. And you guys can see that I took some massive losses. I took about 60% of my HP losses in all of my swordsman groups. So my halberdiers and, more high-tier infantry as well as the Tattersouls are in pretty decent shape, but you can see there was a lot of carnage there, and that was not a fun situation to be in. So immediately, my power bar took a pretty substantial hit, losing not only a lot of models, but HP as well. So definitely a rough start to the battle, but hey, it makes for a fun one, guys, and we'll see if the Sons of Sigmar and the Tattersouls can hold up. So my opponent actually very aggressively dives in with his Paladin and his Lord, and also these other Pegasus Knights. Again, I think he was under the impression that he could just overwhelm my cavalry with these Pegasus Knights and different troops, but he has yet to meet the Knights of the Blazing Sun with the Flaming Sword of Ruin. And I also had a group of halberdiers over here who were able to come in and help. So right now it's a very, very pitched battle in here. You can see the Knights of the Blazing Sun facing off with the Pegasus Knights, so very, very intense situation. But unfortunately for him, these Halberdiers with their armor piercing, as they get a little closer in here, and then also the Warrior Priest with that damage, the damage debuff in his bombardment, they're going to do pretty well. But in the front line here, you can see my extremely tattered infantry force is moving and taking a lot of fire, but they're doing the best they can, and you can see Sons of Sigmar over here are just getting picked to pieces. But regardless, they're going to last quite some time, guys. They're very tough and still confident despite the fact that they're almost completely decimated, so their loyalty to Sigmar is definitely keeping them in the battle here. So I was able to pull the Tattersouls up and around, and thankfully my low-tier swordsmen at the front were able to take the brunt of the punishment. So these guys are going to get up here, and they're actually really quick, guys. If you take a look, they have 37 run speed, which is pretty fast by infantry standards. If we take a look at the Bretonnian infantry, they have 31 here, and I believe the peasant bowmen, I'm not sure what they have off the top of my head, but they're going to get in here and get a pretty decent charge. And if I'm not mistaken, they have a high charge bonus as well. So this is going to be a great situation for me. The Tattersouls should absolutely tear through these guys. So we'll get back to that in just a minute, guys. But right now, we're going to go back to this cavalry engagement over here. And you can see, guys, the Pegasus Knights are getting decimated. And so is the Paladin, and just basically all of those guys with the Knights of the Blazing Sun and the Kindle Flame. Although he did just use another great cone attack there and did pretty substantial damage. But I think a large part of it was the Halberdiers. And, you know, people assume that since the Knights of the Blazing Sun don't have anti-large, they don't have armor piercing. And again, these troops are fairly heavily armored, the Pegasus Knights, that they wouldn't be able to get in. But when you mix, like I've been telling you guys, the Kindle Flame with the other attributes, they're going to be quite strong. So my opponent, he does use a potion of healing and re-engages. And you can see he gets a nice little initial shock there and is able to do pretty good damage. So again, it's still a very pitched fight, and then he also uses the Curse of the Midnight Wind here, guys, which is really strong because all my troops are cluttered. So that minus 34 melee attack is putting my melee attack at 7. So that's definitely still a very, very tough battle. So in the back line here, most of my swordsmen were also decimated or wavering or retreating, and also my crossbowmen were just picked off. Having those field trebuchets just constantly shooting at them, as well as the peasant bowmen who had the high ground advantage, it was a really tough situation for me. But the Tattersouls are just putting in a lot of work. They're finally cutting through these men-at-arms, and once they're able to get through onto these peasant bowmen, you can see this one guy actually got back here. He's laying the beat down, but doing the best he can. But my swordsmen here have been routed off. Over on the far end, though, it's actually not going terrible. The Sons of Sigmar, as well as my second group of Flagellants, are still holding the line, and then also my Halberdiers, I felt like I was relatively well covered over there, so I just brought my Halberdiers over here who are just helping out. And when you mix them in with the Flagellants, it allows the Flagellants not to absorb all that damage. That's one of the main issues. If the Flagellants are alone, they really suffer the consequences of having 0 armor. But when they're mixed in with other units, kind of in the same sense that you mix your fodder in elite units, they can actually generate pretty decent results with their combat stats. So you can see the Bretonnian front line is slowly starting to collapse over here, and also over here the Tattersouls. You know, even though they're taking peasant bowman fire, they were able to break those guys. And, you know, now the floodgates are relatively open. The Tattersouls are just going to go right after these peasant bowmen and just cut through them. On the same note, my opponent does detach a group of men-at-arms with polearms over here who are coming to help in this very close engagement. You guys can see this lord here. He's pretty beat up, but most of my Knights of the Blazing Sun are broken, and you know, I still have an Empire Captain who's confident, my General of the Empire who still has a potion, and then I have a Bright Wizard, as well as the Warrior Priest, who I believe is still here. So mostly, we traded really evenly, and you guys can see this was just some straight-up cavalry carnage here. But at the end of the day, I think I have stronger leadership here. So this lord is going to be forced off the battlefield. But he did bring 3 groups of Pegasus Knights, if I'm not mistaken, and I only had 2 groups of Knights of the Blazing Sun. So I would say it was a relatively even exchange for me, but unfortunately for him, this lord is starting to take a serious beating, and he does not have a potion anymore. So he does get some Halberdiers in here to support, but my General of the Empire, he's actually pretty beat up as well, and it looks like we both decided to take a tactical retreat and regroup our forces, because I still did have 15 models here as well as 9 there. So his Pegasus Knights are essentially completely decimated. So on that same note, the Sons of Sigmar and my Flagellants here are chasing these guys down and are doing a pretty good job. I've actually been having a lot of fun mixing in Flagellants and different army compositions, and I feel like it's not as bad as people think. Although they really can get shut down really, really hard if you're not careful in your micromanagement. So he does have this damsel supporting some of these peasant bowmen, but regardless, they are broken. And I wonder what happened to the Tattersouls. Did they just get completely eradicated? I think they did, guys. They probably got run over, but we do have one more engagement here, and I'm able to get away from these men-at-arms, which was very, very essential. And now that kind of this battle has devolved into just kind of pure chaos, I was able to get these Knights of the Blazing Sun, and he didn't have enough Pegasus Knights as well as his leadership to really stop me. So at this point, the Knights of the Blazing Sun are just going to continue to ride through these poor peasants. Definitely not an ideal situation for them, so we'll give you guys a nice scenic shot of these guys getting run down, which is always a good time. Definitely one of the best aspects of Total War, just the franchise as a whole, is those big charges. So It looks like he still has these failed trebuchets, but they are routing off the battlefield. You can see the 2 Sons of Sigmar. Look at these guys. These guys are just straight up champs. Everyone else in their regiment has been destroyed, and they're just chasing off an entire group of trebuchet crews here. So they actually beheaded that guy, so that was definitely a very savage end here. You can see these flagellants are doing a pretty good job just chasing off most of these units. And one problem, guys, if you deploy to the very edge of the map like this, when your units break, especially as a faction like Bretonnia, you are not giving yourself any cushion. And essentially, you know, they're going to run off the battlefield very easily and won't have a chance to come back. So my opponent, he does use his Lord actually to dive in with a last desperate stand, and he picks off my Lord actually with his Lord. But on that same coin, he did lose his Lord as well, and his Paladin, I believe, took some serious damage or was killed himself. So at that point, most of the Bretonnian infantry routed off the battlefield. A bit of a tongue twister. And my flagellants and the Sons of Sigmar, all 2 of them that are left, were able to clean up the battlefield. So definitely a very, very well played game on my opponent's part. You can see a lot of it, guys, just came down to this battle. The Knights of the Blazing Sun, in conjunction with my leadership, were able to take out 3 groups of Pegasus Knights, as well as his Lord and Paladin. So very, very well played there. My opponent did a great job with that cone attack, and that was just absolutely devastating. My swordsmen, you can see this group got 0 kills. They just got run over in the beginning. So again, it was a very back and forth battle. Great game to my opponent, I Faint 2.0. I look forward to seeing you again on ladder. Hope you guys enjoyed that one, and more content coming soon.